Where do we start here? I'm thinking regulation, given the fact that it's put a lot of these names under pressure. Are we going to start to see that this year here in the U.S.?
Well, you know, I don't know, because there's a lot to happen in Congress. Obviously, they're dealing with the shutdown and everything else. And so it is on the minds of Democrats to start thinking about legislation or investigation or pressing the FTC to do more, to look at some of these companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon, I guess. So there could be some movement. There's just a lot going on in Washington, so tech is sort of in a good spot in that way. There's too much going on. But I do see definite interest in what happened, you know, trying to figure out what to put into place around privacy. There'll be a lot of action in the states, I think, in terms of privacy and other issues. And we'll see about antitrust. I think that's a developing story over a longer time period. But I think a lot of people are thinking about antitrust issues and if these companies are too powerful and too big. And that's going to be an ongoing story for 2019, I think.
Yeah, and I'd imagine certainly with the new Congress coming to work as well, it becomes a bigger theme potentially. In terms of Facebook specifically, and given the fact that we've just seen what's been sort of an ongoing drip of negative headlines and more negative stories in general around the company and data practices, et cetera, do you expect that to continue in 2019?
You know, it just keeps coming out, right? I think more if there's investigations, certainly there'll be more emails. You know, any company has got to worry about emails in general, like the things that are out there within the companies. And all these companies have these message boards and all this other, and Slack and all kinds of information. And so I think if investigations start, or if there's subpoenas or anything else, there could be trouble, because who knows what comes out from those things. And, you know, Britain already sort of pulled some Facebook emails in. And they weren't very flattering. So I think it'll continue a fixing period for Mark Zuckerberg and his management team. And the question is how many of them will stay, if there's any movement there, and things like that. And so I think trying to get it right is probably the theme for this year for them, and not innovation, which it needs to be in a lot of ways. And so that's the question: is can they get back to an innovation cycle versus dealing with, you know, I don't want to do wildfires, dealing with problems. I just don't want to make that metaphor anymore. Dealing with problems all year round. They've got to get back to innovation, and that's going to be very hard for them.
Well, speaking of that market, let's talk about advertising writ large and what happens with that in 2019. 2018 seemed to be another rough year for anybody who's not Facebook, Google, or maybe Amazon trying to make money off of ads. Even the you know, winners in digital content were struggling to really grow revenue. Names like Vice, Vox even. We saw some names shutting down. So what happens? Is there a further shift toward subscription, toward quality, toward maybe being smaller for longer and getting the actual user to pay?
I think the last one. You see, there's going to be a mix of things. I mean, everyone's struggling. I mean, some of them had like ridiculous business plans, right? And so you can't pull the whole group down. But in advertising, the winners are still Facebook and Google. And then Amazon off to, you know, they're going to be increasingly in advertising, but their commerce platform is just dominating. And so the big players dominating is going to be the continued story. For all the problems Facebook has, for all the controversies around Google's China issues and other things and the sexual harassment stuff, they're still the most dominant companies, period. And so that's the big question. That's why regulation's a big, can these companies continue to dominate the way they do in digital advertising? And is there room for anybody else? And so I think every company who's at least in content has to be thinking of lots of revenue streams, from podcasting to events to subscriptions to anything, to do that, to try, and keeping the expenses in line, obviously.
Kara, it's Sarah. I'm sort of concerned more and wondering more about where tech goes in terms of political money next year. You know, year before the election, they were burned last time around with the threat of regulation and the overhang there. It doesn't seem as clear cut which way the valley is going to go in terms of money, support, how outspoken the CEOs are.
Right.
You have any predictions there?
Not at all. Not at all. I think they're going to pull back a lot. And I think there'll still be, you know, it's a very liberal group of people. And not liberal, I don't want to say liberal. They're more tolerant. I'm not sure. Some of them are very libertarian. But in general, much more, probably progressive would be a word that you want to use for people in Silicon Valley. So I think you're going to see donations, but nothing, not these loud sort of parties and things like that. I think they're sort of licking their wounds. And they definitely don't want to antagonize one way or the other on either side. And so they'll probably play to both parties. They'll probably try to stay in the middle. Not so much, you're not going to see any big fundraisers by these people. I think they're going to be very quiet politically in the next cycle.